Northern Ireland Secretary admits new bill will break international law. A government minister has said a new bill to amend the UK's Brexit deal with the EU will break international law. Concerns had been raised about legislation being brought forward which could change parts of the withdrawal agreement, negotiated last year. Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis conceded it would go against the treaty in a specific and limited way. Former PM Theresa May warned the change could damage trust in the UK over future trade deals with other states. Labour's Shadow Attorney General, Lord Charlie Falconer, said the government had an obligation to comply with the law, domestic and international. He added, throughout the Brexit process, the government purported to act within the law. This is new and very bad. Number 10 revealed on Monday that it would be introducing a new UK internal market bill that could affect post-Brexit customs and trade rules in Northern Ireland. Downing Street said it would only make minor clarifications in extremely specific areas, but it worried some in Brussels and Westminster that it could see the government try to change the withdrawal agreement, which became international law when the UK left the EU in January. It comes as a sixth leading civil servant announced he is to resign from government. The permanent secretary to the government legal department, Sir Jonathan Jones, amid reports he was very unhappy about the bill. The row also comes at the start of the 8th round of post-Brexit trade deal talks between the UK and the EU. The two sides are trying to secure a deal before the end of the transition period on the 31st of December, which will see the UK going on to World Trade Organization rules if no agreement is reached. The UK's chief Brexit negotiator, Lord David Frost, called for realism from his EU counterparts, saying he would drive home our clear message that we must make progress this week if we are to reach an agreement in time. The EU said it would do everything in its power to reach an agreement with the UK, but will be ready for a no-deal scenario. On Monday, Boris Johnson said if a deal hadn't been done by the time the European Council meets on the 15th of October, the two sides should move on and accept the UK's exit without one. Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, Louise Haigh, said it was deeply concerning that the Prime Minister appeared to be undermining the legal obligations of his own deal with the introduction of the new law while the negotiations are taking place. Rule of law. The text of the new bill will not be published until Wednesday, although the government has confirmed it will deal with the issue of the so-called Northern Ireland Protocol, an element of the withdrawal agreement designed to prevent a hard border returning to the island of Ireland after Brexit. The practicalities of the protocol, which will deal with issues of state aid, financial support given to businesses by governments, and whether there needs to be customs checks on goods, is still being negotiated by a joint UK and EU committee. But Mr. Lewis said the bill would take limited and reasonable steps to create a safety net if the negotiations failed. Speaking during an urgent question on the bill, Chair of the Justice Committee and Tory MP Bob Neill said that adherence to the rule of law is not negotiable. He asked Mr. Lewis, will he assure us that nothing proposed in this legislation does or potentially might breach international obligations or international legal arrangements? The Northern Ireland Secretary replied, yes, this does break international law in a very specific and limited way. He said the government was still working, in good faith, with the EU Joint Committee to overcome its concerns for the future of trade in Northern Ireland, but said there was clear precedence for UK and indeed other countries needing to consider their obligations if circumstances change. Mrs. May, who stood down as Prime Minister last year after her own Brexit deal failed to get the support of Parliament, said, the United Kingdom government signed the withdrawal agreement with the Northern Ireland Protocol. This Parliament voted that withdrawal agreement into UK legislation. The government is now changing the operation of that agreement.
How can the government reassure future international partners that the UK can be trusted to abide by the legal obligations of the agreements it signs? The leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, also called it a sad and shocking state of affairs for our country. He tweeted, breaking international law will do untold damage to our reputation abroad, it will make us poorer and make it harder to solve global crises like the climate emergency. Sammy Wilson, who acts as Brexit spokesman for the Northern Irish Democratic Unionist Party, said he was pleased to have the new bill that could deal with some of the issues that could affect his constituents, such as state aid and customs checks. But he said the DUP had warned ministers of the impact of the withdrawal agreement early on, saying it was a union-splitting, economy-destroying and border-creating agreement that has to be changed and replaced. He added, "We will judge this bill on whether it delivers on these kind of issues." However, Claire Hanna, a Social Democratic and Labour Party (SDLP) MP for Belfast South, said the protocol was a symptom of 4 years of terrible political decision-making. She added, "It is now the law. This government is obliged to implement it in full." She also cautioned Mr. Lewis not to use the threat of a border on the island of Ireland or the hard-won impartiality of the Good Friday Agreement as a cat's paw in this or any other negotiation. But former Conservative leader, Sir Ian Duncan Smith, said the act that brought the withdrawal agreement into law in the UK allowed the government to reserve the right to make clarifications under the sovereignty clause. Mr. Lewis agreed, saying the law would clarify the points about what will apply in January if we are not able to get satisfactory and mutually suitable conclusions in negotiations. He added, "It is reasonable and sensible to give that certainty and clarity to the people and businesses of Northern Ireland." This is from BBC News. Please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.